Welcome back to Kingdom Convo. I'm your host, Kitara, and this is the podcast where we start conversations where most people are afraid to start. So, I'm back again with a new episode, and this episode is a kind of personal episode, and it's about imposter syndrome. How to deal with imposter syndrome. So, imposter syndrome, let's look up the definition of imposter syndrome. What is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is a psychological experience where you persistently doubt your abilities and fear being exposed as a fraud despite clear evidence of your success. Instead of acknowledging your skills, you tend to attribute your achievement to luck, timing, or deceiving others. So when you deal with imposter syndrome, you find yourself that you're a kind of a fraud, that you don't belong. And I've dealt with it multiple times. Like for example, Kingdom Convo. I thought multiple times like, why should I start Kingdom Convo? Am I the all knowing of the Bible, of Christianity, about life? Why should someone listen to me? Why should someone even pay attention? And God reminds us that He doesn't need you to be all knowing, all perfect, because that's He. That's Him. And if we were all perfect and all knowing, we wouldn't need Him. So part of imposter syndrome is also us always remember that we need our source and we need Him as a source in our life to give us the confidence to confirm that we are where we are supposed to be. And there are a lot of people in the Bible who dealt with imposter syndromes. For example, Moses. Moses was a stutterer. Moses had a stutter, and he even told God, like, why choose me? I cannot speak well. I killed someone and I ran away like a coward. Why would you choose me? But God said, I will be with you. So God uses people who are incomplete, who has um have shortcomings, who are not perfect, who are imperfect, but he makes perfect. So if you look even in Jesus, his surroundings, his apostles, they were all imperfect people who were surrounded by a perfect person, Jesus. Why would Jesus pick all those imperfect people? Because all those imperfect people will be relying on him, will ask him for wisdom, will learn from him, and will be dependent on him. So the imposter syndrome has been something that God has displayed in the Bible multiple times to us, that it doesn't matter where you come from, I can still use you. You only need to trust me. And for example, David was he feeling like an imposter? People found him to be unfit because he wasn't the right height. He didn't have the right body maybe for a chosen king. But God said, hey, I want that one. I want the smallest, skinniest, shortest person, and I'm going to use him for a fight. And he will fight the strongest person, the tallest, and the biggest person, just to make a point that whenever you have God, it's not about your strength. It's not about your length. It's not about where you come from. But if you have God, you have everything to overcome everything. So I want us to know that God also gives inspiration, also gives ideas. And when he gives ideas, he waits for you. But if he sees that you don't really move, when he asks you to do something, he expects obedience, even though you don't understand it, even though you don't know all the answers, you feel unqualified, but you trust him. Because don't forget, when God gives you an idea and you don't act on it, it's disobedience. It's disobedience. And God speaks about disobedience and he says, obedience is better than sacrifice. So obedience is better than for you to do all those things for God, to pay your tithe, to be perfect, to be the most generous person. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Obedience is better than sacrificing your time, even. He wants you to obey his orders. And don't get me wrong, if you have an idea and you sit upon it, and you're sure that God gave you that idea and you're not acting upon it, it's disobedience. It's disobedience. Disobedience is not only that you don't you don't want to follow Jesus's word. You don't want to follow the gospel, or you don't listen to God's commands. It's all disobedience is also a order that God gives you and you say no. I don't want to do it. I'm not equipped. I'm scared. I'm afraid what people are going to say about me. I'm afraid how I'm going to look, how I'm going to sound. I'm afraid that I will look like a fraud. I will look like someone who doesn't belong. That's disobedience. And I want us to know that we can't be disobedient and expect God to push us, to grow us further in our circumstance or in our belief. For you to grow and to be a better person, a better Christian, you have to be obedient. You have to listen when God says something and just follow, even though you don't understand. It's not for you to really understand, but for you to just be an open yes. And when you have a imposter syndrome, it's kind of having a, it's not an ego, or do you have an ego? Kind of an ego that you know better than God and you know yourself more and what you're capable of better than God. So it does not only show that you feel that you know better than God, it actually shows that you don't really trust him as well. And when you don't do what he asks you to do, he will use someone else. And those someone in the Bible is an example. Saul was disobedient. He did everything he felt like doing. He did everything that he thought was the right thing. So he had believed in himself. He saw himself as a kind of God because he believed in himself, then really believing in the creator giving him directions. So let's just say he didn't really listen to God's commandments. He was disobedient. Even though that God chose him as king, even though God saw potential in him, God removed himself from him because of disobedience. He was a ruler, he was still in control, but God removed himself from him. So God can remove himself from us. He can still leave us with our gifts. He can still leave us with our surroundings, but he can leave. The spirit of God can leave you. And we don't want to be like Saul, because Saul was depressed. Saul was not happy. Saul was dealing and tormented by spirits and demons. He needed David actually to play him music to calm him down. But God saw obedience in David. God saw David as a man of God's heart. And why would God even compare David to himself? David was a sinner. He did things that were forbidden. He was bad on paper. But God saw his obedience. When God asked him something, David will do it. David realized that he was not self sufficient. David realized he needed a source for him to progress. He needed a source for him to rule. He needed a source, and that was God. And God saw that sacrifice that he did of his ego, of his status, as obedience. And that's an example that David wasn't perfect. David was a sinner. David made mistakes, but God saw his heart because he was obedient. He remembered always to go to God when he made mistakes. He always remembered to go to his source. Like Abraham, he The voice told him to sacrifice on the mountain, and he brought his son. It broke him because he thought he needed to sacrifice his only son, Isaac. But God wanted to see if Abraham was also a man of obedience and if he could trust him. So God saw that as a sacrifice and he let his son live, of course. So let us not make the mistake that God removes himself from us. Even though we may not understand it, just be in the moment. Be in the moment. Understanding comes later, or sometimes understanding never comes. But are you okay with the unknown? Are you okay with God being the knower of all and that you can't always know everything? You have to be okay with that because God is God. And when He tells you to do something, it's for a reason, it's for a greater good. And if you are not willing, someone else will. Isn't that sometimes strange when you see that when you have an idea that someone pops up with the same idea and it's pretty successful, but you weren't consistent or you didn't even start with it? That's how God works. He works through people and He waits for the one who is obedient and who's ready to serve. So, this was a short message, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and share this video and like this video. I want to reach 50 subscribers, so help me, and I will see you next time. Bye.